In Module 1, we created a simple WebdriverIO script. It went to our local URL, got the title of the homepage, clicked the callout button, then logged out the title and URL of the product page. We ran all of this locally through the node command using WebdriverIO's standalone mode. Now we're going to look at using the WebdriverIO Test Runner, which is a utility that comes with a WebdriverIO NPM package. It comes with many features, including an easier way to manage our configurations. Instead of having to redefine our browser and SELENIUM settings in every test file we write, we're going to store those settings in a single configuration file. The test runner will use that file to apply settings for all of our tests. So how do we make this configuration file? Well, we could create it manually, but the file is pretty large. To help with this, the test runner provides a utility which asks a series of questions to help customize our settings to our specific needs. To run the setup, we need to call the WDIO Test Runner utility. Similar to SELENIUM Standalone, WebdriverIO added a command line utility to our node modules bin folder. And just like before, we can call it by referencing the path plus the name of the utility, which is WDIO. Since we haven't set up a configuration file yet, WebdriverIO recognizes this and will run the setup utility. We'll be asked a series of questions about how we want to set everything up, and then it will generate the configuration file for us. Let's try it out. The first question it asks is where our SELENIUM server is. We'll look at some third-party server options later, but for now, let's stick with our local machine. The next question is which framework we want to use. This is talking about the test framework we want to wrap our test in. We haven't talked about this yet, but we'll be using Mocha as our framework. Yes, we would like to install the framework adapter for it. This will run an npm install script for us and add the WebdriverIO Mocha Framework npm module to our local installation. It will also save the dependency information to our package.json file. We'll need a folder to store all of our tests. By default, they're located in the test specs folder. However, I prefer just keeping them in the test folder. I'll update this default value to be test/*/star.js. Just so you know, this is called a glob pattern, which is a convention to define where files are at. The ** section says to look in all the subfolders for files. So if we later organize our tests by feature, say we add a login or checkout folder, WebdriverIO will know to look in those subfolders as well. The *.js matches any file with a JS extension. Moving on to reporters. By default, WebdriverIO uses the .reporter even if you don't select it. We'll leave this option as is, but you could select the spec reporter if you're curious. Next is services. Services are used to add extra functionality to our tests. Some enable integrations with third-party tools, like Cloud SELENIUM services. Others are used for local features, like Firefox or Phantom.js. We're not going to set up those services at this time, but we'll come back to them in the professional add-on video series. There's one service we do want to use, though. Last module, we set up the SELENIUM Standalone NPM module. It made it easier to get a local SELENIUM server running, but did require an extra step to start the server whenever needed. WebdriverIO has a SELENIUM Standalone server that's pretty awesome. Instead of us starting our server manually, it will automatically do so when you run your tests. This not only saves us a little bit of work, but also makes it easier for others to install and run your test suite. With that selected, we'll tell WebdriverIO to install the service for us, then move on to the next question. We're going to set logging to silent. We could use verbose, which outputs all 4 types of the logs, or we can be specific to a certain log type. These can be helpful if you're running into any issues, but they do create a lot of output noise. That's why we'll leave it silent for now. This next option defines where WebdriverIO should store screenshots if there is an error with our tests. This can help with seeing the exact visual state of the page when debugging issues in your tests. Let's keep this as the default error shots directory. The base URL value is where our website is at. We'll use the IP address with the port of our node server. Now it's running the installation for our Mocha package, and we'll give that a second to complete. It looks like it's successfully created the file with all of our defined settings, along with a few more. We'll take a look at that file in the next lesson.